It's been over a year since Egypt's military ousted President Mohamed Morsi, and politics still weigh heavily on many Egyptians' minds. VOA correspondent Elizabeth Arrott recently returned from a reporting post in Cairo. During that time, she witnessed profound changes in Egypt and the region.
From the Arab Spring to the war in Syria, Elizabeth covered it all. We talked about it. Take a look.
Despite the violence and the killings, people here at the pro-Morsi encampment vow to stay on, pressing home their point they want no military intervention in Egyptian political affairs.
Now, let's talk about your role as a journalist and as a foreign journalist in Egypt. What was that like over the course of the years that you were there?
Prior to the uprisings, people were, fine. It was a little bit repressive and bureaucratic and just getting around and doing things. And when the revolutions and the uprisings took place, people were so keen on telling their story to the world, and there was such pride, and there was such, they thought, here, someone tell our story, and you were very welcomed, and it was terrific, and much easier to work. And then that quite quickly devolved into, there were some areas, in Syria, if you're talking to Syrian refugees in Jordan or something like that, they would be very eager to tell the story, and still be keen on Western journalists. And then as things got worse and worse, I think there were suspicions. They conflate, say, what American journalist with the U.S. government policy or lack of policy.
You talk about the volatility of the situation in Egypt and the continued volatility of the conditions. Do you think we're going to see an end to that anytime soon?
It's hard to say that it could be anytime soon. I think there's so many competing interests, and it's so complex at this point. And there's the other problem too, and we've seen it obviously in recent days, the increasing attraction for people around the world to come, and it's a very, very small minority, but it doesn't take that many people to come and take part in this fight, especially like the Islamic State, for example. And you're seeing people from around the world who think this is cool, that what horrifies us is actually very appealing to a very small minority of people, and they're coming to help fight alongside that, and that's hard to counter.
Did you have any experiences of your own when you were in the region where you felt like, uh-oh, I might be in danger here?
Yes, and various sites, obviously not kidnapping, but, in Libya there was sniper fire, there was bombings. In Egypt, several times been, surrounded, chased, one time tried to be dragged out of a car, another time trapped in a car with a group of sort of 100 people slamming and wanting to kill us. And, and actually it was one time that the secret police of Egypt came to our rescue, and I was actually very happy to see them.
And we're seeing now also a targeting of journalists among some of the violent extremist groups. Tell us what your reaction has been seeing the recent beheadings of the two prominent American journalists.
Well, of course, that was, just a horrible tragedy, and it was done for propaganda purposes, at the expense of these men who were out there just trying to tell a story from all sides and to get a true picture of what was going out, but used for propaganda purposes by a group who just wants to shock and had nothing to do with their reporting per se. It's just purely as a part of their war, and it's a tragedy. How
do you think social media is playing into that? Because now it's not just information coming from sources like us, like VOA or other news organizations. Pretty much anyone around the world can put out their own information that's very public. So how is that sort of affecting the way that you can do your job, and then also the way that people are getting brought into these kinds of extremist groups?
Well, on the positive side, citizen journalism has been a boon throughout. We're seeing things that we would never ever have seen. We couldn't possibly, the Journalist Corps internationally couldn't cover all the events that have been recorded for us by citizen journalists. So that has been amazing. That's really helped tell the story of what's going on. The other end of the spectrum is the fact that the other end of this propaganda machines and media campaigns by such groups as Islamic State, and earlier we saw it especially out of Yemen with the Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, very, very professional organizations in terms of media, and they've been successful among a certain group.
Elizabeth Arrott, VOA News, Cairo.
That was VOA's Elizabeth Arrott. She was our Cairo correspondent from 2009 to 2014, 5 extremely eventful years in Egypt's history.